That's right. Back at it again. Full custom hot dog, and we're not doing a Blu-ray review today because we're doing a Netflix anime adaptation review today of Death Note with
That's right,
yeah.
fam, and it's Rax here from the Rax the Hero channel without the last O because it's too long for Twitter.
How's it
And we're
going, hot
talking
dog?
about Death Note. What's up,
That's
guys?
week. It's episode 3 already. What
Ah,
we had a solid start. We had the Bleach live action movie, which was good. I liked it a lot. Then we had the
that was great.
abortion, or that is Dragon Ball Evolution.
I wouldn't call it an abortion, but it's definitely
It's
not
definitely a
enjoyable for
bastardized
countless
version
people.
of the source material,
Could have
but
been worse considering
definitely could
this.
have been worse. And there's there's reasons that I will compare that to this and why it doesn't kind of register on the same uh, kind of like meter that a lot of people probably put it on when saying how the quality of it. So first off, what did you think about the movie? I don't know how much you know about Death Note.
I don't know much. There's been a Death Note stuff has been in a couple games, like some of the Jump Ultimate Star games. In fact, if you notice, most of the references I have for a lot of anime come from video games, and it's probably been from Jump Ultimate Stars on the DS.
I've
I was
noticed.
excited for this when it was going to come out, though, because Adam Wingard directed this, and he's a notable and really good horror director, and this was like a passion project for him. So I was very excited, and then obviously very let down because his other stuff is great. So
I mean, there were parts of it that I definitely liked. I think everybody I've ever talked to really liked how William Dafoe did Ryuk. I thought that was really excellent. I thought his take on it made Ryuk feel a lot better as a character. Gave him much more of like a very intimidating, very threatening, demonic presence, which I really liked about the
oh,
movie.
definitely. Very diabolical.
It's just like William Dafoe's voice in general. I thought added a lot to the movie, and there were parts that I did like about kind of Light being a little bit more cautious early on, but at the same time, they made his character so much of a kind of a bit of a pussy, and I think that kind of hurt the character a bit. But obviously, I think the biggest strike in this movie was their way that they brought down L into being like this almost mentally staggered person who was like near tears whenever he was challenged at any point throughout
Well,
of the
the weird thing
movie.
about L to me was how like he's completely nuts, and then you're kind of like, oh, of course this guy is on the police force or a detective, and of course they would ask this completely crazy guy for help. You know,
Yeah, and
like I don't know if that translates well to the American version. You
what
know?
what a lot of people don't actually get when you get like these really genius characters is a lot of people that are really smart are also really weird just
Yeah.
by like how they think, and I think that actually was one of the things that worked really well for Elle as a character, both in the movie and in the manga and anime. But obviously that it was a it wasn't the same character, but it was a really weird representation of the character in a live action movie, I'd say.
I liked him too, and the actor's really good.
The actor
So
was really good. I think they just kind of gave him a really weird alteration to Elle.
yeah, it was wedged in there kind of weird too. It didn't feel right.
Yeah, and like I was talking about with the Dragon Ball Evolution movie, there are times when they do an adaptation and they do their own thing, and it can turn out kind of bad like this in Dragon Ball Evolution, in a way, but at the same time not really feeling insulting to the source material because they're kind of just doing their own version of it, not like something like The Last Airbender where they were like just they just used what the first season was and crammed it into a movie and then somehow managed to make every single scene that they used worse than the actual version.
And that's definitely some credit you can give this. Like it does try to take the source material, it seems like, and it definitely Americanizes it and tries to adapt it, but maybe it just didn't go far enough. You know, so when I initially watched this on Netflix, I watched it the night it premiered, and then I watched it again today. I was actually really excited by it because there's that early death scene where he writes those bullies' names in the
Yeah, and he
death note, and then
decapitates him. That was really
yeah.
cool.
So I not knowing the source material was like, "Oh wow, this is going to be Final Destination the series," because I also didn't know this was a movie. When I
Yeah.
first watched it, I thought it was a series. And then I noticed that they went into the whole thing of Kira, the god type stuff and all this, and I was like, "Oh my god, no. This is the movie." and then
I
I got really
actually,
bummed.
that's one of the things that they did in this that I preferred over the source material is just if you don't give a reason, it's Ryuk's choice, and he goes out and kills them, and you kind of see way more of an influence from Ryuk, because the whole thing about Death Note that I think, especially at least in this movie, is that Ryuk was by far the most interesting character to watch.
Yeah.
Like William Dafoe really made the character, I think, way better than the source material. And it's really weird when you could say like an Americanized adaptation of a manga and anime. There's a character that's better than the original. It's a really weird kind of thing to think about. But
Right,
but
right.
honestly, I don't think there's a single person that I've talked to that's like I prefer the original Ryuk to the William Dafoe version.
So you're pretty familiar then with the original manga or anime, the source material.
I would say to agree. And not to something like we had with like Bleach and Dragon Ball, but I definitely you can tell all the things that's different. And like I said, I preferred how Light kind of set things up early on. He was a little bit more cautious, and the fact that he went by Kira to kind of distract people into thinking he was like some Japanese guy, and that's why they kind of started with a lot of big Asian criminals and like dangerous people that
Hmm.
it kind of brought focus over to them looking in areas of Japan. And there were small bits like that that I liked in this movie, but obviously overall, the movie, uh, I wouldn't say it's bad. I would say it's the bar for live action anime adaptations, especially ones from like coming over to America instead of the Japanese making it, is pretty low. Whereas something like Dragon Ball Evolution was a complete and total crash dumpster fire, and Bleach was really good. I would say that this is right over the bar of of acceptable, because this is one of those movies that after I watch it, I didn't feel like it was a waste of time. I was just like, I didn't feel too negative about it, but it wasn't really positive. It was just kind of like that was an all right way to spend the time, but I don't know exactly if I want to watch it again. I am interested in the sequel. I'll watch it. It was enough that I was like, it's all right.
I guess the big question with the sequel is going to be who is going to come back to what's kind of considered
Well,
not so
they
hot.
didn't kill Ellen. I
No, no,
don't
no,
think.
no. I
Yeah, and
mean
they could.
cast wise though.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, are you going to be able to get the same cast back? I don't think you're going to get Lakeith Stanfield again, who
Yeah,
played L. You know, I don't think that's going to happen.
the only person they really need is Ryuk. They actually what would be really cool, to be perfectly honest, of what they could do is maybe kind of take make Ryuk the main character in every movie. They just go into different people and maybe bring in
They should.
original characters. I think that'd be really
They should
interesting.
do that.
Cause
Just take the idea of the Death Note and completely like do something different with it. See, but that would make it to me. That'd make a good series. And again, just
yeah,
make it like Final Destination the
I
series.
don't
That'd
know
be rad.
if you read the manga or watched the anime, but in the end, actually, Ryuk kind of laughs at Light as he's like dying and loses, and Ryuk really kind of just lives on. You don't really get to see, you know, I don't remember them showing anything of what he does after that, other than probably just continue the cycle. And I think it'd be
Yeah.
cool if you had something like you have a series kind of like people know about something like JoJo, where it's a continue of the family and whoever's bearing the name, but just kind of it's more like Ryuk as a bystander watching everything that he set up unravel around him, which I think would be pretty interesting to see, and would make something of a live adaptation worth watching.
I mean, for me, there was just a couple things I didn't care for in this. Like the pacing, I thought just felt off, where everything just felt rushed because they're cramming all this into, an hour and a half. You've got characters that I don't feel like completely understood. Like I didn't feel like I ever understood Light's character at all. Not only in being able to relate to him, but
Yeah,
even understand his motives or what he wanted to do or what he was going to do. So everything, I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah,
I
because
just felt alienated from this whole thing.
it's a little bit hard for them to do kind of like in a movie, because the whole thing about Light is he
Yeah.
kind of starts out as a kind of like a good guy in nature, and then kind of becomes an anti-hero, and then becomes a villain. And you can't it's really hard to cram that into one movie, and I think that some of that was a little bit rushed, but I think it could work if they kind of continue along the line.
And that's why something like what you said would be good. I mean, you take what everybody knows about the Death Note, which is the book and Ryuk, and you start pass that around and do your own thing. And I don't know why not. I don't think that would be bad. You
Yeah,
know?
because it doesn't even also have to be Ryuk. It could be others. Because I don't remember all their names, but I know there's like a part in the series where you see Ryuk over like in the realm where he's from, and there's a whole bunch of different crazy looking demons like him that none of them look similar. They all have their own personalities, their own things, and it'd be cool to see them, do their own versions and how those characters interact. And it's almost like
Yeah,
a a, a a horror movie from the viewpoint of the monster, which is pretty cool.
right. And I also don't think that there's many other anime series or manga series you could do something like that with. Take its core and kind of really just give it a jostle,
Yeah,
and move
and
it somewhere else. So
it's
that's kind of
something that
cool.
what I'd say about the movie is it has a lot of potential for the live actions to
Yeah.
work if they think more about stuff like that and less about how can we just adapt everything of the source material, because obviously they're not going to do the source material to a key, and I think people would prefer it if they took kind of like the idea of it and did it in its own light and did it in its own kind of way, not to be a pun on the whole its own light kind of thing.
Wah, wah. Have you seen the other Death Note movies?
No, I haven't watched the other
The,
ones.
I haven't either. I heard those were bad, and then people say this is bad.
I think
I
that
don't know. It's just below okay for me. I definitely don't want to do this
personally,
again
I,
for
I, I
sure.
think kind of like how superhero movies were kind of like real wonky originally, and then they started to get better. I think that is the same thing with live action anime movies, because what I've read by a lot of people doing them online, that they've taken note of the things that make them look silly, and that's one of the guys who did the Bleach movie noted from the Gintama live action movie, is they needed to figure out things that looked good transferring over, and what looks good on screen. And then obviously after I think after the Dragon Ball Evolution movie, a lot of people tend to try a lot harder when they do these live action adaptations, because that's something you can at least tell from this is they were trying.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean there's that. I mean like I mentioned for the director Adam Wingard, this was a passion project. I think he initially Paramount and then they ended up canceling it, but they allowed him to move it to a different production company or something.
Yeah,
So, I mean, he really wanted to make this movie and he made it.
because
you
something
know,
like
like
something like Dragon Ball Evolution, always going to be a pullback because it's such a easy example. Is you could tell like the guy was just kind of he didn't really give much of care of what was going on. It was kind of just like very loose
yeah.
references and stuff. You would be like, oh, I can kind of get that because I know he watched like a YouTube scene while he was writing it out.
And we
But
need a Yamcha.
yeah, but with this, you could tell that the guy was trying to make it fit in this whole different format while still
Yeah.
liking the source material, which was cool, which I liked about it. And you could tell, especially with how they did Ryuk, and they emphasized how you don't trust him. He's not your friend. You shouldn't at any point kind of try and side with him. He's in it for himself really the whole time. Because that was kind of
Now
like
have
the
you
inevitable lesson at the end of the series: is Ryuk is not your friend. He will not help
right.
you.
Have you heard any of the feedback from the creators of Death Note? Much like we mentioned with Dragon Ball, it got Toriyama back into the Dragon Ball business, and he made Dragon. I was
I
going to say
haven't.
Super
Have you?
Dragon Balls. Yeah. According to Wikipedia, the original creators of Death Note have praised the film, with the former stating, "In a good way, it both followed and diverged from the original work so the film can be enjoyed, of course, by not only the fans, but also by a much larger and wider audience," which makes me wonder how it did in Japan, like critically, if it was well, if the fans
Yeah,
took it
I
and
can
loved
believe
it, or
I can believe that, because most of the people that I've talked to, like when I say like when I anyone that's actually watched the movie will tell me the things they like and don't like. So obviously the thing, like I said, Ryuk a lot of the time is very liked, but for the most part, when I discuss with people that don't like the movie, I don't think they've actually watched it. They just hear live action anime adaptation in
yeah,
America. They don't want that, but anybody that's watched it, I've talked to, can discuss like, yeah, there were parts I liked and parts I didn't like. This, and this, and that's one of those things where it kind of fits, and you can tell that I think they're getting better. Because like when we watched like the
yeah,
Dragon Ball Evolution movie, it was like we liked the training parts, and then the how they did the capsules, and that was it. Everything else kind of sucked, and they weren't putting any effort. And it's gonna be more apparent of those things, of when you can tell fans are really upset when you get to like the eventually when we do the last Airbender movie.
yeah. I mean, I feel like fans, at least in Japan, had to at least like the Japanese ones if they made three of them.
Hmm.
And I noted, like, after it came out, I was kind of surfing some horror groups and stuff, and I was kind of seeing what people's reactions were, weighing it on my own. And I did notice it seemed like the people who I noticed that really liked it weren't familiar with the source material. So I don't know if that speaks to the strength of this film or what, you know. But I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. It's just one of those things. So, do you have any real closing thoughts on this, other than like I look forward to a sequel. We already went over like what we kind of want from it and some ideas towards it, and that's all I really got over the whole thing. I really liked
I,
Ryuk, and I liked some of the changes they did, but overall, I thought it was an all right movie.
I think it would have been a better series, but obviously everyone thinks that. Of course, it's obvious. I don't look forward to a sequel, but I'll watch it again, and I'm very curious to see who comes back. Even if they could get the original director to come back, I'd be very surprised.
Yeah. Anyway, so that seems about good for this one. Do you want to plug yourself? Of a full custom hot dog on Twitter
Uh,
without the last O, because that is just
Last
too
O.
long for Twitter.
It's too long for Twitter.
You need to
And
send
let us
Twitter
know
a
what you think in the
message.
comments.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah,
hit
we
that
need one
like
more
button,
character.
subscribe to Full
Mash it.
Custom Hot Dog. I got a
And
YouTube
subscribe
channel.
to Rax the Hero
Yeah, they're
for
both
all your
pretty
manga
cool
and
guys.
anime needs.
And Hot Dog
I
does
heard.
really crazy movies, and if you like horror movies, he's doing a bunch of Halloween spooky movies this month. They're crazy.
Too spooky.
It's too spooky for Twitter without the last O.
That's just too spooky for Twitter. Nice.
Oh, you need to start saying that without the last O, because that is just too spooky for Twitter. All right, so
I like it.
yeah, I think that calls it good for this video. I thank you very much, everyone, for listening.